Hello and welcome to Who Gives a Vote, where we talk about life and politics.
There'd be 1,000 blossoms bloom as far as I'm concerned.
The people on this podcast do not represent any organisation they may be associated with. Their views are exactly that.
Please explain.
Can I ask you a favour? Jump onto our Facebook page and YouTube channel and subscribe. Your support means the world. Now let's go.
But I ain't spending any time on it.
Well, welcome to this episode.
That was good. I've never seen that before.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, well, that's our new intro because it's boring just saying everyone doesn't represent their own views. But so we put that out there. If you do want to like and subscribe or like the Facebook page and subscribe to YouTube, that would be fantastic. If we get enough, we're sort of in our infancy. So if we do get enough people liking the Facebook page, we can then go live on Facebook, which is one of our aims as well. George Seymour, welcome to the pod. How are you feeling?
Yeah, very good. It's good to be here. Good to be back.
And David Lewis.
Evening, Stuart. Evening, George. Great to be here.
It is a fantastic day. Now we're having it on a Wednesday again. Normally we have this on a Thursday. We are having a break after this for 3 or 4 weeks. I'm going to New Zealand, helping my wife. She's riding the North Island on a push bike or a mountain bike. So it should be exciting. So we'll have a break, and then we'll at the end of March, I think it'll be the first week after the South Australian elections.
I'm going to call the South Australian election anyway.
Well, we can't.
I'm ready to call it.
Not until section 3 of this podcast. You had a meeting today at Fraser Coast Regional Council.
Yeah, we met at Maryborough City Hall today. Yeah, it was
Any controversies?
No, not too many controversial things. A lot of sports stuff, a bit about the basketball stadium, a bit about Estelle Park, and the Olympics, agreeing to sign the guarantee deed with the Olympic Organizing Committee for 2032.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I've gotten very into archery. Archery is an awesome sport. I go to the different local clubs. Yeah.
It's nice to see you at the sharp end, George.
Yeah.
I'm a bit... my shoulder's a bit gone. They really actually can be quite hard to pull back those bows.
No, I use compound bows. Recurve are.
Okay.
So compound bows are the ones with the sort of the pull. I don't know what the technical things are, but yeah, they're a lot easier to pull back than recurve.
Yeah. Well, my son uses a recurve and he goes out looking for boar, which sickens me. But they each to their own, I suppose. Today or tonight, we're going to be talking. Well, sorry, David. How's your week been?
Good. Great sale on Sunday. Lost by a fraction.
Oh yeah, I saw that. So that was competition here at the Bay.
I was just our regular.
Yeah,
I saw. We had a round
boats
woody
out
race, which is interesting.
And in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Round woody, wow.
Well, we're going to talk about 3 topics, or really one and a half topics. The first topic is one that, George, you've brought up. I was surprised you must be a monarchist because you want to talk about the royals. Yeah. You want to talk about the royal formerly known as a prince. That's Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He has been stripped of his title and now been arrested. So we're going to talk a bit about that and what that means for the succession plan of the British monarchy, which, David, you should be very excited about.
Wonderful. Yes.
Yep. And then leading on to that, we're going to talk about the referendum, what it means. Is this a good time for a referendum discussion? And a little bit about the 1999 referendum, which, David, were you a part of that? Were you involved in?
Yes, I've still got a vote yes sticker in my garage. Yeah. I was on the hustings and went home with my tail between my legs.
There was a great campaign for yes, wasn't it?
Well, they were pretty good campaigns, I thought, on all counts. But let's come to that.
Yes,
in the fullness of time.
We will. Yeah. So I guess the reason why I wanted to particularly talk about the succession and federation tonight, and George, you were quite interested in the Game of Thrones style concept.
Yeah, I love the fact that there's a list that goes on and on and on through their cousins, and yeah, it's fascinating stuff.
But you are not a monarchist.
No, I'm definitely a Republican.
So you find it interesting rather than practically important as far as democracy.
Well, I think it is practically important to know who is going to be our future monarch. I mean, they changed it in 2013 when they realized that it was possible that Kate and William could have a girl first and then a boy, and the embarrassment that would cause. for the younger boy to become the king over the girl. So that was the most recent big change in 2013 when they took out the male priority.
Yep.
But I think it's really extraordinary what they're proposing now to extract one person but leave his children in and all their descendants. And this is Andrew. I mean, at one point he was very close to the throne. I mean, he was been second in line behind Charles until 1984 or 1983, whenever William was born.
So as it stands, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has been arrested for suspicion of misconduct in public office. It has made international news. He's not been charged. He's not been found guilty. But our Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, has sent a letter to Keir Starmer, from the UK Prime Minister, and he has said, let me just see if I can get this up. This is what he said. He said, in light of recent events concerning Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, I'm writing to confirm that my government would agree to any proposal to remove him from the line of royal succession. I agree with His Majesty that the law must now take its full course, and there must be a full, fair and proper investigation. These are grave allegations, and Australians take them seriously.
Wow, and look at Keir's name. The Right Honourable Sir Keir Starmer, KCB, KCMP.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
Whilst we're talking about aristocracy.
Is that a KCMG? You know what that stands for?
Is it King's Council? What was that?
Well, KC is King's Council. Yeah. Was there a KCMG there, which you get when you're knighted? It's an abbreviation for kindly call me God.
Is it really? Let's have a look.
Well, I know what KCB is. Kindly call me. Yes, all right.
Kindly call me P. It's not God.
Yeah. That was the old joke.
Yeah, kindly call me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, on that note, I wanted to ask the question. There's been no charges laid against the former prince. The Prime Minister has sent a letter. Has he jumped the gun in sending this letter? Or is this completely appropriate?
I think it is. Obviously, it's not really about...
It's appropriate? Or
yeah, it's completely appropriate. And obviously, it's not really about the suspicion of malfeasance in public office or misconduct. It's about him settling a court, him using his mother's money to settle a case. And everything else that's coming out in terms of being very close friends with a pedophile. Ultimately that's what it's about. This other stuff from when he was a trade envoy and went around the world and forwarded, pretty sensitive emails to Jeffrey Epstein. That's what's led to the arrest. But the whole thing about him, for the good of the monarchy, they need to extract him. For the good of, the functioning of Australia and Great Britain and everywhere else that has the monarchy really requires the removal of somebody of that character.
What's your thoughts?
Well, look, I guess there are two elements to it, aren't there? There's the question of whether that particular letter was appropriate in terms of what it was saying. There's also a question of whether it was appropriate to say it at this stage. I was listening to an interview with Anne Toomey, Professor Anne Toomey, who's a constitutional lawyer, who knew a remarkable amount about this. And she was saying that it is standard procedure for the United Kingdom government to send letters to each of the other countries where the King, Queen is still head of state, asking them what their view is on this issue. She thought perhaps this letter was in response to a letter from Starmer about that, but there's been no suggestion anywhere in any media I've seen which confirms that. It sounds pretty much like he did this, off his own bat. One of the commentators said that he had said, "Oh well, Australians like to be first with these things," which the commentator, and I agree with him, suggested this was nonsense because mostly Albanese in particular waits to see what everyone else is doing before he commits himself. So there is that question. I must admit, I thought at first, my first reaction to it was that it was grandstanding. and that this is following a pattern of Albanese of late, where he's seeking to ingratiate himself.
But he is a republic. He's a Republican.
He's a
isn't he?
Republican,
So
yeah, sure.
This
but
would actually stand within his a few things. When he's seen poor behaviour, in whether it be the way that Susan Ley was treated, he called it out. When he's seen poor behaviour here, he's probably preempted it. So whether it's grandstanding or not, I guess you could make that argument, but there's also an argument that could say he's acting on ethics.
that he wants to call out bad behaviour. I guess that goes to the second of the points, which is this an appropriate time to come to that conclusion when the charges haven't been heard and dealt with?
Well, let's look
I
at
hear
that.
what George says there, that in fact there's plenty on the public record which suggests his behaviour has been appalling. Whether in fact he's ultimately convicted of anything is another question. I would have worded that letter differently.
But his behaviour, and because I want to actually go through that.
I mean, I guess if the family kicks him out, so he's kicked out by the family, but we're still happy to have him as king. That's kind of the people who know him best are the ones who disassociate himself.
I guess
including his own daughters right now.
But I guess what I'm asking is that from a government perspective, when should a government turn its mind to this? So if you look at the due process for removing a person from the line of succession, it's UK government makes the decision, so the cabinet agrees to pursue removal. They have draft legislation, and the bill excludes Andrew from succession. Then there's a parliamentary passage, so the bill passes, similar to here, where you have the where it's by majority vote from both from both houses, and then you have the royal assent, where the monarch, which is his brother, brings the act into law, and then at that point, and only at that point, under established convention, each realm where monarch is head must legislate for that to occur. So then then you have the implementation of legislation at each realm. So for the the Parliament of Australia would then pass a law, not a regulation. So it's a law. So it's got to go through both the lower house and the Senate, and then at that point the law comes into effect, and that's when notification is given to the UK government saying that the law has been passed, and then the commencement of that happens then. I guess when you break it down to that, and if we look at again, where Anthony Albanese says, "I'm writing to confirm that my government would agree to any proposal to remove him from the line of royal succession." So my question would be, when it requires Parliament through a vote of the upper and lower house, why would he be referring to it being from the perspective of his government rather than the Parliament? Because it's the Parliament who must decide. So I guess if you look at it from that perspective, has due process been followed? Because if it were the behaviour leading up to his arrest that were in issue, wouldn't the UK government have acted then? Shouldn't they have already acted? Shouldn't they have already removed him? And then wouldn't that be the time when the Australian government would...
Yeah, they probably wouldn't want to start without being pretty certain that all the different countries were going to do their part. I mean, it'd be a bit of a catastrophe if half did and half didn't.
I'm not sure that anyone wouldn't, but I guess it's the process. Having said that, I love the letter. I think it was fantastic. Any opportunity to call out poor behaviour from entitled people, particularly the monarch, you've got to call it out, don't you?
That's true, but my concern is that, and this might sound like a pedantic old lawyer, but the first paragraph of that letter is quite inconsistent with the second paragraph. The first paragraph says, "My government will support any move to chuck him out," and the second government says, "But we have to follow full, what does it say, full course, and there must be full, fair and proper investigation." In other words, we've already come to a conclusion, but you must have a full, fair and proper investigation. That seems to me to be nonsense. He ought to have, worded it in a different way that perhaps indicated that we are agreeable that if the British Parliament comes to the conclusion that this is appropriate, then we'd recommend to our Parliament that it follow the same course. Something like that would have been better. I agree with you, but is it really the Australian Prime Minister's position to go calling out bad behaviour for somebody on the other side of the world?
And technically, I mean, his role was UK Trade Commissioner. That's what that was the public role that he for another country.
Yeah. So
But
the
it's not
response,
a big issue for me, but I just think it's
yeah, the reason I like that letter is because it's the type of letter I would have written after 3 or 4 whiskies. So, not necessarily the one that a prime minister should write, but again, politically, it's probably a very sensible letter to write, isn't it?
Yeah, I would imagine if you did public polling on Andrew right now, he wouldn't be into double digits. People have sort of seen this slow drip over the last decade or so of
sleazy stuff.
sleazy stuff, and it's coming out more and more now, and
Let's look at UK succession because, George, you're pretty keen on that. The current king is King Charles III, and then the next in line is Prince William and his children, followed by Prince Harry and his children, followed by Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Charles's
Can I
brother.
just interrupt there? Wasn't there a Princess Anne or something? Is she still around? And does she get into this line of
it doesn't
succession
happen
anyway?
once it goes down to Charles. It'd have to go down to all of Charles's children.
Yeah, so once
Well-
Charles takes on the role,
Yes, the Charles
Oh,
is
Andrew,
children, but
she must-
Andrew's not Andrew's a sibling, and so was Anne.
Yeah, that's right, and she's in there.
Is she?
Her
Oh, well,
her daughter
perhaps-
is Zara, but that's what I was saying. In 2013, how is she not? Is she younger than Charles? Because it was in 2000.
Yes, she's
it-
the second eldest.
Yeah,
I think,
which is
from
why
memory.
the Andrew. Because it was only until 2013 that a younger male would not
Would drop below the
would go above a
sister. Or
yeah.
whatever, yeah.
because then she sits in the 17th position.
Is that Zara and her older brother's
Prince,
like Peter
Princess
or something?
Anne,
You know,
Charles'
Oh, she's-
sister.
okay.
Did she marry Peter
Right.
Phillips or someone?
Yeah, what do you?
been
It's like
married
Days of
a
Our
couple of
Lives. How do you know?
No, I just love it. It exists, and I just think it's extraordinary that.
See, I come from a Scottish heritage, so I know it exists.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I want it to,
Yeah.
or I'm interested. Having said that, I think Charles comes across as a really good king.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
a decent human
Yeah,
being.
got sound views on the environment, on architecture,
Architecture.
gardening.
Yep.
Yeah, I think he's an interesting guy.
Mind you, you could find probably half a dozen just as interesting and just as intelligent people in any city of 50,000. I mean, there's us.
Yeah.
It's not. My concern, obviously, with the monarchy has been that it's totally inconsistent with the democratic system. You may well be lucky and end up with a smart, intelligent, humane sort of person as your sovereign. You may end up with a clown. You may end up with somebody who's got some serious mental issues, and as I think the history of the British monarchy proves, it's not a system for modern times. Interestingly, this is one of the things we talked about way back in the day when I was studying political science. One of the grounds why the political scientists advance as to why Britain won't get rid of it is it's a terrific tourism asset.
It is a tourism. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just part of the kind of hero worshipping of celebrity worshipping.
Yeah.
It's why people know all about film stars.
Yeah.
I think this is just part of it.
Yeah.
But it's also
I think it's
also
an absurd way to run a government.
Yeah.
it's also identity, and history for the UK is very significant. So to remove your history, both the buildings and the stories, would be very challenging for the UK. Not so challenging for Australia. I would think.
Yeah, I just love the randomness of it. Like Queen Elizabeth II, this extraordinary figure, from 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, all this different, decades of change. And she was only there through just some random fluke that her uncle Edward wanted to marry a Catholic, she wasn't Catholic, a divorcee, Wallis. So Edward, who was kind of a bit too close to Nazi Germany, wanted... so he could marry Wallis Simpson. So almost like this big love story. That's why he abdicated, and because of that, his brother became king, and Queen Elizabeth then Prince Charles, and then William. It's just extraordinary that these little human decisions about him being in love with Wallace meant that he had to choose that over the throne, and it throws us down this giant new course of history. And I think Queen Elizabeth is extraordinary. She was there for decades.
But are you loving it because it's a good system or because it's a good story?
It's a good story.
Yeah.
But I do think Queen Elizabeth was really good. I think in all those periods of change, she was there as a real solid anchor, I think, in terms of continuity and global security almost.
Yeah.
And the reason why...
I think anchor is the appropriate word, as in prevents progress.
Right.
Conservative.
No doubt.
Conservative values.
No doubt.
Australia is currently a constitutional monarchy with a federal system. Any change that would require a change to our constitution. And David, you were involved in 1999 in the only move for a referendum on the republic and going from a monarchy to a republic. It was hotly contested. Majority of people supported a republic. I think it was something like 2/3 of Australia supported a republic in 1998. Come 1999, Australia goes to the polls in November the 6th, and it goes down with 45% in favour, 54, I think 54.5 voted against it nationally, and every single state voted it down.
I'm sure the ACT would have voted it up.
I haven't checked that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
It doesn't count in terms of the states, but
because it's not
it's not in the constitution.
The territories don't count as
in terms of the majority of states.
Majority.
I remember that. I remember it. It was all about the model, like vote no for the politicians. I remember the ads. We'll vote no this November. Yeah. Yeah.
The monarchists ran a very clever, if pretty dishonest campaign, which included, one of their appeals was to the direct election Republicans. For those who may not remember or may not have been around, there were two models. The model we were voting on was a model whereby we'd get a president who was appointed by a majority of both houses of Parliament. So that you'd get a number of nominees perhaps put forward, and then the Parliament would decide.
Yeah.
The direct election Republicans were ones who wanted a direct election for the Republic. The politicians generally didn't support that, and the reason for that is that a directly elected president would have a lot more kudos, a lot more, in effect, electoral clout, and you'd set up this... yes, that's right. They develop a mandate, and you'd set up a tension between the president on the one hand and the Prime Minister on the other. The idea was, let's keep this as close as we can to a Governor-General who doesn't have a popular mandate and doesn't purport to and won't be trying to compete.
Why not keep it as a Governor-General rather than call it a president?
Well, I think keeping it as Governor-General would have been a smart move. But just to get back to the question of the campaign, I mean, the monarchists ran quite deliberately with slogans like, don't vote for this republic. In other words, they were appealing to the direct republic supporters who were around about 10 or 15% of the overall population. They were appealing to them to reject this, and then we'll give you another chance. Of course, once that was rejected, they said, "Oh no, you've had your chance, and you can't have another referendum." So, in that sense, it was quite a dishonest campaign. But that was one of the reasons it went down. The other reason I think that it went down was that there wasn't bipartisan support for it.
There is. We have talked about adverts, and we all remember them. I want to show you three. So the first one...
I can also remember there was a very good one. I'll see if you play it. That had Fraser... It was bipartisan, but like an elitist kind of one. Had Fraser and Whitlam. Are you about to show that? Where Fraser says it's time.
No, I'm not. And I did debate, but it didn't fit my argument, which and it was also long, and the quality that I could find was pretty poor. So I decided to go with these ones. And there's a few things that I want to make some points on. Here's the first one. And this is not a yes or no. This is just a factual one.
As you may have heard, there's going to be a referendum. And it's going to be held on the 6th of November. At the referendum, We'll all have to make two important decisions about Australia's constitution. It provides the framework for our system of government. With your vote, you're helping decide which way to go.
The first question is whether or not to become a republic. If you decide to go one way, for Australia to become a republic, you're saying our head of state should be a president who's appointed by 2/3 of the members of the Commonwealth Parliament. If you decide to go the other way, for Australia to remain a constitutional monarchy, you're saying we should keep the role of the Queen and the Governor-General in our system of government.
You'll also be asked whether our constitution should include a preamble, an introductory statement setting out the values of Australian society. For more information, see this week's newspapers.
Australia's constitution. Which way do you want to go?
Oh, no website.
No website. Can I ask you a question? What do you think would have irritated me senseless, like with that advert?
The road signs.
Why have a road sign to your left saying Australia's Constitution and a road sign to your right saying Australia's Constitution? They're both going in opposite directions, leading to the same place. It doesn't make any sense. That's not actually what you're voting on. You're either voting for Republic left or monarchy right.
That would have made a lot more sense.
Like to me, I just watched that and go, no wonder people were confused. So what am I voting for? The Australian Constitution or the Australian Constitution? Which one would you have chosen?
Australia's Constitution.
See, you can't be wrong. But also, equally...
and you're always wrong.
Yeah, and all these adverts are exactly the same. So it creates this real... What is that talking about? Other than the fact that, okay, there's a referendum on.
Yeah. I guess they also had the difficulty of the two questions, the preamble. So they couldn't...
Well, you can separate. You can have, if you have 500 ad slots, make 400 of them about the most important issue, which was republic. Do you want a republic or do you want a monarch? That's left or right, one way or the other. But you can't turn left and right to get to the Australian Constitution. Doesn't make sense unless it's a ring road.
All roads lead to Rome. I must admit, I'd forgotten about the preamble bit, and I can't even remember what it said. Interestingly, in this...
was it Les Murray wrote it or someone?
I don't know. It may
Not Les Murray, he's a soccer guy.
No, he's
You're the poet at the time, and Aidan Ridgway, I think, helped.
I wonder whether in this modern times when we're saying all these immigrants should sign up to our values, it wouldn't have been a bad idea to have them set out in the Constitution. But in any event, that was, I think, a minor sort of...
no one voted on that.
Minor argument.
Yeah. Let's look at the next advert, which is the Yes campaign.
Harry Cooper is voting yes.
How are we going to feel on November the 7th if we didn't vote yes on November the 6th? How are we going to explain to future generations that we had a chance to become a republic and we blew it? Who knows when we'll have another chance to become an independent nation? This is your chance to make your mark on Australia's history. Join us on November the 6th.
Vote yes for Australia.
What was his reason for voting yes?
No regrets.
And I can't stand. I can't stand to a negative and a positive being said in the same sentence. How would we feel if we didn't vote yes? Well, probably exactly the same way we did the day before, wouldn't you?
Well, you've missed an opportunity.
Yeah. So straight away, let's say I don't have a view. I haven't even given it any thought right now. At the moment, I've got two choices: to vote for the Australian referendum, Australia's Constitution, or I can vote for Australia's Constitution. Yep. Or I can vote yes because I might feel bad about voting no if I didn't vote yes the day after I should have voted yes. If that is the sum of the complex, it's not a very there were a lot of those types of.
And that ad just because I was at uni in 1999, and I wasn't a citizen then, but I followed it all, and that ad kind of reminds me of what it felt a little bit elitist. Like he's like some TV vet. Yeah. And so as I imagine you'll show the No campaign, and it's country music. It's very dirt. And I just think that impacted a lot of people. They the celebrities versus outback Queensland.
Well, let's look at
Can I just throw something in also about that ad?
Did you write it?
I didn't write it, and I don't even remember it, to be honest. It seems that the point they should have been stressing is: do you want an Australian for your head of state, or do you want a foreigner?
A resident for head of state.
You want an Australian where you get some say in who it is, or do you want a foreigner where you get no say in who it is? You know? That's the sort of tension I would have liked to set up in the campaign.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I wasn't asked.
Right now, you could just put a picture of the former prince and say,
"This could have been your head of state.
This could be the guy that you don't get to choose."
We only need 7 accidents, and he's it.
Yeah. So from that perspective, now let's look at the no, because
Who decides who the president is? The Australian voters? No, the politicians.
The politicians should not be appointing the president.
Politicians will get to choose whoever they want to be the president, and they'll be able to dismiss him whenever they want without any regards to the public at all.
A job for their boys and their mates.
We'll vote no in November. Let the people have their say.
If you want to vote for the president, vote no to the Politicians' Republic.
Yeah, wow.
Well, James Blundell coming out. You know, he also did the Haynes advert. You know, put my hands all over the country. Yeah. So he's we vote no for Australia. We vote no for Australia, not because if we didn't say yes, we would feel like we should have said no, or we should have said. I can't even remember how it goes now. But a vet says, or how impactful was that? Like that is a
that was a very impactful ad, and I think it was Sophie Mirabella at the beginning. It's interesting to see the people that were involved, like Greg Barnes, Turnbull, obviously Tony Abbott. A lot of people who were very politically active over the next quarter century were running the 2 different campaigns.
Mirabella came up here for an event where there was her and a couple of somebody for the RSL and the National Party, like Boswell or something like that. And in the course of that, I went to it, and at that stage I was branch chair of the Liberal Party, and I didn't want to be too unkind to her because she was in the Liberal Party as well. But she said something quite extraordinary there, where she said, no one has ever put up a reason why it's a good idea to have an Australian head of state, which was just total nonsense, But they all lapped it up. I was too polite to call her out on it publicly. I went and spoke to her privately afterwards, and I said, you're totally wrong. If you want to have a read, for instance, of Robert Mann's article, where he said he had an article, and 2 articles. One was entitled "Why I Am Not a Republican," and a second article which said why I am no longer not a Republican. And then in that he outlined 3 or 4 very cogent reasons. And I started to tell her this. She just turned and walked away. Yeah. So there was nothing gave me more pleasure in politics than to see her defeated eventually. I think she was just Kathy, dishonest.
Yeah. Putting your opinions aside, and you didn't have a view, you're just someone in public land, and the monarchy, the Queen's there, and you had to choose based on just these adverts, what would you choose?
Yeah, I'd vote no. I'd say, look, that doesn't sound like a good model. There must be better models. Yeah, let's consider some other models. I'll vote no on this Republic.
And we'll come back to it when we get a better model.
Yeah, well, it sounds like we're going to have a really good discussion about different models, and this one, as they say, is no good.
The other aspect that they hammered was really that idea of, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Mm-hmm. There was an interesting comment on that in Don Watson's book on Paul Keating, a memoir of Watson's time as speechwriter for Paul Keating, and he remembers flying with Keating across the bush, looking down on farms with derelict machinery in paddocks that had been there for 40 years, but no one had bothered to take them away, horse-drawn ploughs and things. And he said, the point about the monarchy is that it's obsolete, just like all that old machinery lying in a paddock. It may not be broke, but we've got much better models these days. We've got better tractors, we've got better ploughs. It's a question of obsolescence. But this wasn't pursued either.
One of the big pushes in 1999, even though John Howard moved toward the referendum after the People's Vote or the People's Forum, where they came up with the model. But prior to that, in 1988, he said these words, and then Tony Abbott after the. So I've got two clips. One, Howard before the referendum, and Tony Abbott afterwards. Let's have a look.
This was the best republic that the best brains of the Republican movement could come up with, and it could only get 45% support. And that is a credit to the healthy scepticism of the Australian people when faced with change for change's sake and a dud model republic.
If we are to become a republic, then the people themselves should directly choose the president.
Two politicians saying you can't trust politicians to elect the head of state.
Yeah,
and that's the theme, isn't it?
That's the theme.
Did anyone think
Although
about,
I
did
thought
anyone
one
think,
of Howard's arguments was that he didn't want to set up a rival, source of power in a directly elected. I think he had too bob each way on that sort of question.
Well, he wanted to honour his election commitment, didn't he? He wanted to deal with that, but he didn't want a republic. He wanted a monarchy,
right.
as it were. What I find interesting from this whole thing is people kept saying, don't let the politicians decide the head of state. Let the people decide. Who decides the Governor-General now?
Yeah. And right now, the Northern Territory, they have a very controversial administrator about to be appointed, their version of the governor, solely on the basis of the chief minister. Yeah, the Northern Territory is able to appoint an extremely partisan governor figure on the basis of on the basis of a few members of the government.
The reality is, that our head of state is determined in the bedrooms of Buckingham Palace, isn't it?
Well, it's actually the Prime Minister who selects and nominates the head of state and advises
the Governor-General.
Sorry, the Governor-General, yeah. What did I say?
Yeah,
the head of state, but that's actually Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the head of state, the representative. So the Governor-General is determined by the Prime Minister, which is then ratified and confirmed by the King. So isn't the head of state's representative, the Governor-General, already just elected by one person, which is the Prime Minister?
In effect, yes. I read an interesting article 3 or 4 years ago. I don't remember the name of the bloke who wrote it, but I do remember that he was a Liberal advisor, and I thought it was a very sensible idea. He said, perhaps what we should do is we should trial the idea of electing the Governor-General by a majority of both houses of Parliament. In other words, use that model that was proposed in that referendum, use that model to elect the Governor-General now and give the people some time to get used to it. In other words, baby steps. And I thought that was a pretty smart idea.
That is that's as smart as legislating the constitutional changes you wanted to see in the last referendum.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You have the power to legislate for Aboriginal inclusion and dealing with the issues that were presented in the last referendum by just legislation and get people used to it. You can do the same here.
Yeah, it's remarkable that with all the Republican premiers and prime ministers, that none of them have done that. All the ones that could have had a vote in Parliament, a free vote.
A lot of them scored very high on those things, as in they were a long way from capital cities. Well, they scored low on education, they scored high on age, low on income. This particular article gave a plot of the same issues for the referendum on the Republic, and they were very similar, similar. The further, like you go to Maranoa, which was the lowest vote for yes in the Voice referendum, it's the lowest vote for yes in the Republic referendum.
Do you think with the Republic, the issue was that it was too specific, that it was a model, and Voice wasn't specific, so people could say anything they wanted about it? So, like the Voice, like. Or maybe did it have the exact wording that was going in the Constitution? Because it felt like they kind of went. The attack was the opposite of with the Republic, where they're saying that it's not specific enough. We don't know what this. Maybe that was just they were just able to say we don't know what this will mean.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I think that's essentially what it is. Yeah.
Do you think that this current conduct of the royal family and the fact that we've moved to King Charles, the Queen is now passed. Whoa, there we go. Did you hear that? Yeah, I'll have to. My phone is somehow on. Do you think that the Republic debate will be brought up again?
I think it's unlikely. The Albanese government's not terribly brave on this issue. I don't even think Matt Thistlethwaite doesn't have the same position he had before. They had a sort of an assistant minister for movement towards a republic. I don't think they have it anymore.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's much political inertia towards becoming a republic now.
Yeah, look, I think that's right. I don't think it's a matter that that's foremost in the public mind, and Albanese would see it as just another matter where he'll get his head kicked in by the Conservatives. It will happen if perhaps you get a bipartisan support for it. Curiously, this is really left field. One of the things I proposed in the last federal election that might have helped Dutton get out of the hole that he kept digging for himself was that Dutton could have announced that if elected he would support a move to a republic and hold a referendum if he got bipartisan support. This was a tongue-in-cheek suggestion. Of course, it wasn't ever going to happen, but my reasoning was that he badly needed a circuit breaker, and this would just stop the media in their tracks, and for a week we would be talking about this. It would also indicate that the Liberal Party's finally realised they're in the 21st century rather than the 19th, Anyway, that was just my sort of midnight fantasy. It didn't go anywhere.
We have a few minutes left. We've talked at length on something I didn't think we'd talk at length about, but obviously the Republic Party is a very exciting part of what could be our future as Australia. Let's move on to South Australia. The South Australian election has been called. The writs have been issued. It's a 28-day campaign, and the election is on March 21, 2026. What's your thoughts, George? Do you want to?
Yeah, I think Labor's won. I call it for Labor. I mean, he's a very popular premier. People around the world really respect him. Particularly, the social media ban for young children really originated with him, with Peter. I'm not sure how to pronounce his surname.
Well, he wouldn't. Yeah, he wouldn't get elected by people under 15. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I think people see him as a politician of conviction. But yeah, he's won. South Australia is always interesting because they've got so many strong minor parties. It's really was the home of the Australian Democrats. The quota in the legislative chamber is pretty low, which is why Cory Bernardi's, putting his hand up.
He's got to get 8%.
Yeah, it's something pretty low. Yeah, to get into the South Australian Upper House for an 8-year term.
So the 2022 election, the results were. Hello and welcome to Who Gives a Vote. I've hit the wrong button, guys. Let me try that again. There we go. We got it. So that is the first preference votes for the 2022 election for the lower house, and you've got there, Labor 40%, Liberal 35%, One Nation 2.6%, and then you've got the Greens.
Yeah, Family First beating One Nation. I think was that Steve Fielding? Was he from South Australia? That senator?
Perhaps.
Maybe.
Yeah, and then if you look at the seats won,
what former minor party politician I'm a really fan of now is Ricky Muir.
Ricky Muir.
Yeah. The four-wheel drive enthusiast. You've got to check out his Facebook page.
He made a lot of sense.
Yeah, Ricky Muir. Yeah. Ricky Muir, M-U-I-R. Check his Facebook page. It's all about going out into the old gold fields, the national parks, metal detecting, finding old ruins. He's a really interesting guy.
Yep. Yeah, and a good politician?
No, I don't think so. His term was cut because he ended up doing some sort of kind of deal with Clive Palmer in terms of a memorandum of understanding or something, and then his term was cut short. Must have been a double dissolution. Yep. So he's only there for 2 years in the end. But
let's look at the seats. So 27 seats Labor, 16 seats Liberal, then independents.
Isn't that interesting that you always think about democracy. I mean, 40% of the vote gets 57% of the seats, whereas the Liberal Party, the 35% of the vote translated to 34% of the seats. That kind of worked well.
Yeah. So then, if you look at it currently, there's a few polls. The News poll has Liberals at 14%, One Nation at 24%. Labor at 44% and Greens at 12%. The YouGov poll through the Advertiser has Liberals at 20%, One Nation at 22%, Labor at 37%, Greens at 13%. What with One Nation having plans to run in all 47 lower house seats, Cory Bernardi leading the One Nation, campaign in South Australia, running in the upper house, and where do you see One Nation?
Yeah, well, if Labor did what Liberals would do and preference One Nation, they could finish the Liberal Party. If Labor preferenced One Nation, like One Nation would become the opposition, and there might be one Liberal MP. Obviously, they're going to preference Liberal Party over One Nation, and
they've said that
save
already.
a few of those seats for them.
Yeah, but so Labor have said that they're going to preference Liberals over One Nation, but Liberals have effectively said, we're not saying anything about it, but really we are going to preference One Nation. They're going to do a deal, aren't they?
I think that's inevitable.
Yeah, they have to. Yeah,
they got no choice.
Self-preservation is a lot more of a stronger motive than principle.
Yeah. So how is One Nation going to go in this? You've called it for the Labor Party.
Yeah, I think the Labor One Nation could. I think they'll get quite a few seats, 8 or 9.
Could they be minority government?
Just not because the Labor preferences are going to flow to the Liberal Party.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that, even though, if it really happened that One Nation, as the polls suggest could happen, got higher primary vote than Liberal Party, that's still, once the preferences are distributed from Labor, those seats would stay.
Would you expect those poll numbers to stay as high once One Nation start selecting candidates to run in seats and they've got to actually start talking?
Yeah, look, one would expect that the vote would drop a bit. It's quite an extraordinary vote, isn't it? I mean, that News poll has Liberals at 14%, got Greens at 12%. I mean, they're almost slipping behind the Greens. The Greens, incidentally, in both those polls are, 3 or 4% ahead of where they were in the last state election. I wonder whether, Malinowskis, I heard him speak several times when I was in Adelaide for the Festival and Writers' Week this time last year. And he was very impressive, very impressive. I think he's, lost a bit of support perhaps because of his attitude to
the Writers'
Week this time. Yeah. And that might be where the Greens are picking up a bit of a vote. But he's still, there's a fair disparity in the News poll and the YouGov poll that you've quoted there, but they're still running around about the 40% on average, 41% on average. So whatever he may have lost over Writers' Week, he's gained, from the collapse of the Liberal vote. Liberal vote from 35% to, well, depending on which poll you look at, 14 or 20. I mean, it's a major collapse. I suspect that they'll gain a bit over One Nation. I think they'll be better campaigners. They'll have better candidates in all probability.
Assuming that candidates won't defect to One Nation?
Yeah, like you see in the UK with Tories going to Reform.
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. I don't know. I don't know the seats. I'm not close enough to the seats to know what the contests are going to be. I mean, there's only, what have we got, 16 Liberal seats and 4 independent seats. It'll be interesting to see what the votes are in some of those, to see which of the seats where. I mean, for One Nation to get in, the Libs have got to run third, and the Labor Party's got to do fairly poorly. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
With Cory Bernardi, is a second high-profile Conservative politician or former politician to defect from a Conservative, from the Nationals, or he was in Liberals, wasn't he?
He was Liberals, yeah.
But he has a very conservative view.
I don't think the Nationals exist in South Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he he's a conservative who's now migrated over or joined and defected over to One Nation.
He formed his own party first.
Yeah. How will that impact? Will that give One Nation more credential in South Australia?
I don't think it adds too much more. I mean, he's a pretty well-known figure through Sky and stuff.
He's an effective communicator.
He did really badly when he stood in his own party for the Senate. I've forgotten what it was.
Australian Conservatives.
Australian Conservatives. Yeah. I mean, he really didn't make much of a ripple on the figures at all. But you know, if he's on Sky, there'll be a coterie of people who know him and are listening to him and so on. But I'm not sure. I mean, I would have thought that the real pulling power is still the red-headed Antichrist. You know.
Do you think this is a litmus test for One Nation and the country? Like how they're going to perform?
If they do well, it's great. If they do poorly, I don't think that matters so much. I'd be more interested to see how they go in Farah.
Is it the New South Wales?
I mean, I don't think we've seen the last of One Nation just because they do poorly in a South Australian election where what did they get? 2.6% last time.
But if they do poorly, that's a non-issue. If they do well, then that is.
If they do well, it's a great advantage for them. If they do poorly, they're bound to do a lot better than they did, and I don't know that that'll be too much of a problem for them.
Is this a high watermark for One Nation?
I don't think it is. They could come out being opposition leader. They could come out of this for the first time being opposition and having a leader and a shadow ministry. It's what you're seeing around the world. I mean, 10 years ago, it started in the US with the Republican Party being taken over by Trump. It's what you're seeing in the UK now pretty strongly with reform. Like people are just assuming that reform is now the opposition, even though they only have like 6 or 7 MPs. After the next election, it's going to be them versus Labour. People have written off the Tories. And we're seeing it here now. We're just a few years behind the US and the UK. I think that it's definitely not the high water mark. We're going to see One Nation really figuring as the party of the right.
One Nation have got a few problems, though. I mean, compared to the overseas stuff, Pauline Hanson isn't, considered to be an intellectual leader or anything like that.
But neither was Nigel Farage.
Well, Farage was a lot more competent, I think, and a lot more, able to run an argument than Hanson is. And I think, Marine Le Pen, people like that as well. I think they're a very different style of person from Pauline Hanson. So I think One Nation isn't as well equipped as some of those sorts of parties. We also have the difference in that we've got both compulsory voting and preferential voting, and I think that's
right. That does make a difference. Yeah, compulsory. Yeah.
How do you think Greens are going to go
in South Australia?
Yeah.
Well, they're polling. I think because pretty good. Yeah. I mean, their vote will be concentrated in Inner Adelaide. They'll hold their upper house seat.
Well, the polls are giving them 12 or 13%, which, as I say, is 4 or 5% better than the last election. I think Malinowskis' performance over the Adelaide Riders Week will mean they'll pick up some votes there. I mean, that Riders Festival is hugely popular. I went there. It runs over a whole week. I was there every day. There were maybe 10,000 people on some days. There are a lot of people there. And a lot of them are not going to be too impressed with Malinowskis. And I think the Greens are going to coattail on that a bit. I don't think they'll get a seat, though.
Yeah. And just with the parties like the Democrats and the Greens, they take a lot of votes off the Liberals. I mean, where the Democrats used to do really well in South Australia was like Mayo against Alexander Downer, like John Schumann from Redgum once almost took the seat.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about Farah? Is that something you want to talk before we...
Well, Farah's very interesting, isn't it? Because we've got an independent Teal candidate running again.
So it's a by-election for Susan
Lee's seat.
Susan Lee's seat, yeah.
That's right. The date, I don't think has been set yet, but expectation it'll be sometime in May.
And the independent did really well last election against Susan. Well, finished second.
She finished second. There was a log. I mean, the figures from memory were Lay was about 43%. The independent was 20, Labor 15, One Nation 6. That's about, as I recollect, about what the percentages were. While 20 is a long way behind 43, you can expect the Labor Party vote will drop considerably because Labor has been there a long time. She would have had a good,
very long
personal
time.
vote.
Yeah.
So that vote will drop.
And there'll be a lot of anger.
There'll be both a Liberal and a National Party candidate, so that will tend to split. And while there's a strong preference flow, presumably between them, it's still that can fragment it. One Nation will go up. Labor's talking about not running, and I suspect they won't run. So
why would they not run?
Good, because they don't want to get 15%.
Well, worse, they don't want to get 12%.
Yeah,
you know,
it's just there's no way to win it. So there's not really a lot of. It's better to say you're concentrating on running the nation. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just that risk of bad publicity. The Greens may pick up a fair bit of that Labor vote. What did they get? About 4 or 5%, I think, last time. And they may well pick up another. They might double that vote without any trouble at all. I think because of if Labor doesn't run.
Well,
so it'll be fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
Yes, we've reached the end of our topics to talk about. Is there anything else you want to quickly touch on before we close for the night? Well, as I said, I'm away. I'm going to New Zealand with my wife for a 3-week break. So we're not going to be doing this, but there will be some content on the Facebook page and also on YouTube as well. Hopefully I'll get to speak to some New Zealand politicians on my journeys as well. That'd be fantastic. So we look forward to seeing everyone next week. Next month after the government South Australian election. Yep.
Give Jacinda my regards.
I will. Thanks, guys.